Hey lads, a guy in the Ladbrokes app is keen on a roughie in race 7.
Do we trust him?
Well, his name is Peter Moody.
Say no more.
Connect with racing experts and like-minded punters in Ladbrokes Mates Mode. T's and C's apply and available on website. You win some, you lose more.
And now, as advertised, Steve Summers here. Steve Summers here, and you there.
Schmoozing for a few minutes.
In the schmooze room.
There's only one thing I want to say before I get into the monologue, and that is this. It is good to be king. And it was so long ago the Rangers were, and we're hoping more sooner than later, the New York Knickerbockers, about to get themselves into the postseason, can become kings of New York City. And by the way, welcome to podcast number 3, Steve Summers Schmoozing Sports. Me here and you there with Paulie Rosenberg on the other side of the glass. And let me say that I hope those who celebrated the Festival of Freedom had themselves a very good Passover. And please, this week coming up, don't take the ball out of anyone's glove or their glove with a ball in it. We'll get to the New York Metropolitans from this past weekend that was, losing Saturday because Lindor, Soto, and Alonso were 0 for 9. And we'll get to the New York Yankees, who needed Ralph Terry and Tony Kubek and Bobby Richardson to beat a Giants team without Mays, McCovey, Cepeda, Allure, Baroyd even, and with Stroman. How awful was he? And you know he got a cortisone shot for the knee, but needs a transplant for the arm. And Rodon, well, too many home runs allowed by him. So with no Cole, no Heel, no Schmidt, right now it's up to the bullpen, and good luck with that. Rory McIlroy in overtime on Sunday wins himself the green jacket, and that's a green jacket full of lots of green endorsements and greenbacks in those pockets. Here's my take on winning a green jacket in particular, and golf. I can't pronounce CL in golf, so it's Jared Goff, the quarterback, and Bagger Vance for the recreation. We think golf really is. If your grandfather can play, it's not a sport, more a recreation, where just about everybody dresses the same, slacks and polo shirts galore. And you don't play against another golfer, you play against a course full of manicured grass, white sand, azaleas, and dogwoods, as we saw in Augusta, water and lots of ocean at Pebble Beach, and let's not forget fescue. Fescue, a too fancy word for tall grass or weeds, much like a rolling stone with no direction or home, like a complete unknown. And do you play golf before a crowd? Well, of course you don't. It's a gallery, and if you're a part of one, don't you ever dare cough or sneeze or breathe heavy, since you and or a plane passing overhead may distract from somebody putting for par. And you could be responsible for a bogey if you were not whispering from that gallery, much like golf announcers do, telling you if the leaderboard shows the bogeyman leading the field. And remember, in a real sport, be it played in a football stadium, a ballpark, or an arena, you may have anywhere from 20 to 70,000 yelling, screaming, cheering, booing their lungs out, with, of course, the athletes going about their business in very calm fashion. With those who do play in the NBA, you have those rubberized fingers behind the basket trying to distract somebody shooting a free throw. And, of course, after inhaling and exhaling and bouncing the basketball a few times, that free throw is easily made. My favorite moment with golf, though, is when Ralph tells Norton to hurry up and address the ball. And Norton responds, "Hello, ball." And now to the New York Knickerbockers. The Knickerbockers, they did beat last Sunday the Brooklyn Nets, but who doesn't? And the Knickerbockers facing the postseason, facing Detroit, better tighten up with energy, intensity, and their defense. They lost the season series to their opponent next weekend and were 0-10 versus the elite teams, 0-8 versus Boston and Cleveland, and 0-2 versus the Thunder. And Detroit won't be easy unless they play high-intensity, suffocating defense against the Pistons, especially on the perimeter. The Knickerbockers won't be starting Tucker. They won't be starting Payne or McBride next weekend. But with Brunson looking healthy, the New York Knickerbockers with Anunoby and Bridges and Hart should stifle the Pistons with a full-throated Garden and could be ready to roar, and we mean really roar, the Knickerbockers to an opening round series win over the Pistons. And still, even though the Pistons haven't won a playoff game since 2008, losing 14 consecutive playoff games, they now have Cade Cunningham, a Brunson clone, averaging 31, 15 boards, and 8 assists versus the Knicks in the 4 games between the two teams, including 36 when the Pistons beat the Knickerbockers back on April 10th. Cade Cunningham is really a very solid point guard. And please block out Jalen Duren, a lob threat for Cunningham, a dunk machine who went 9 for 9 with 13 boards in that Piston win over the New York Knickerbockers back in early April. The X factor for the bad boys no longer bad is Tobias Harris, Mr. Efficiency. He had only 9 shots versus the Knicks on April 10th, but he finished with 17. So the Knickerbockers better be ready to play better than we have seen, and Cat, he must shake Isaiah Stewart, who shut down Towns in that fourth quarter April 10th, but that was then, and now is coming next weekend. So how do we go about fixing the New York Rangers? Number one, goodbye, coach. He may not have been all the problems, but he had no solutions. He was only good beating his former team, the Icelanders, 4 times. Here was a team that began to skate on thin ice in November. Here was a team that came back from a deficit 28 times a year ago. Here was a team that never, if you can believe this, overcame a 2-goal deficit this season. Once you let every team in the league know that Kreider and Trouba was available, they were not the same. The clubhouse and those on the ice played as if they skated in molasses. And Trouba, of course, was sent away. The captain. The New York Rangers, as you know, were better shorthanded than they were on the power play. The lines were crooked and interchangeable. Too much time in their own zone, the neutral zone, the twilight zone. And the youngsters, they really overall collectively did not improve. Rempe on the bench too often. Everybody else, it seemed, on the ice too often. And Krocek, he was on the ice and made himself a difference maker. And Panarin, he just scored a goal in another loss. Chris Kreider, Mika, invisible. And the team had no urgency, no energy, and instead played with taking the President's Trophy from a year ago for granted. Before we take a break and get to Paulie Rosenberg on the other side of the glass, there is something I've had up my sleeve for a while. It's a pet peeve. It is the roar that you get from athletes, regardless of sport. It's a roar of self-congratulations that we see and sometimes hear from everybody wearing a jersey or a uniform. It is that shout, or really, to me, a roar of accomplishment. Even if that accomplishment happens too early in a game, that will not be decided for another hour or two. However, what we see is when a catch is made, if the basket is good, if the goal has been scored, whether it's a round ball on grass or a puck on the ice and everything in between, you see the athlete looking up, the mouth wide open, so open you can almost see the vocal cords and the esophagus, with the roar coming over the tongue and through the mouthpiece, loud enough to almost hear through your phone or your computer or your TV set. I'm reminded of the way Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer had the beginning of their movies, The King of the Jungle, with that roar getting your attention, bringing that roar of attention to himself and getting your attention before the movie starts. So right away, when I see these athletes going about with the roar, I'm thinking of the Lion King. I am thinking now every athlete more than ever replacing, for the most part, that dangling mouthpiece hanging from the lips. We don't see that as often as we now see the roar. Unless you're Stephen Curry, of course, the mouthpiece is always dangling from the lips. So maybe if it doesn't go your way as an athlete, if you're hitting the rim or you're hitting the left post or the right goal post, losing a homer to a great catch, that might produce more a meow of disappointment. But if you have a vivid imagination, if it's not a meow of disappointment or a roar of accomplishment, it may be any other kind of animal you can think of. And if you don't see it or hear it from what I'm talking about when you're watching and or listening to a game, you will hear it now.
So why do Lions roar?
5-point game. Bridges puts up a three, knocks it down.
In this case, it's proclaiming territory.
And that's rocked in the air to left field. This one, gone! Oh, what a start to 2025 for Pete Alonso.
Lions also roar when they're trying to find the rest of the pride.
Swing on a high drive. It is gone! A two-run homer, Ben Rice.
And sometimes they'll roar when they're hacked off with the prey that's spotted them while they're hunting.
Rogers scans. Rogers dances. Rogers runs and throws.
Females will sometimes roar.
Ionescu will heave and hit! Sabrina Ionescu with the biggest shot in Liberty history!
They use their roar to communicate various things, such as marking their territory, attracting potential mates, or warning other lions to stay away.
Cooley to Miller to Zibanejad. He scores! And Zibanejad puts it in the net.
Vito works out of a shotgun set, throws it left for Neighbors, makes the catch, gets his feet down along the far left sideline.
Roaring also helps to strengthen the social bonds within the pride.
Islanders had a 2-1 lead at the start of the period as Horvat scores!
And their most aggressive roars are when they're in conflict with other predators, like hyenas, where they'll roar to try and intimidate them.
Put it in the books! The New York Mets have swept a 3-game series.
And yes, you are right. I have no shame, and neither does Paul Arzuman with his very, very vivid imagination putting together all the elements of that production piece. We'll take a little bit of a break on this number 3 podcast, Raw as I am and Raw as this podcast has been so far with number 3. And when we come back with Steve Summers, with Steve Summers schmoozing sports with me here and you there. When we come back, Paulie Rosenberg will join us. He, of course, producer, director, makeup man, choreographer from the other side of the glass. We are back with Steve Summers schmoozing sports with me here and you there. And joining us is Paulie Rosenberg from the other side of the glass. Paulie, I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a nice Passover, the whole thing.
Mr. Summers, I did have a nice Passover, and we will get into the favorite Steve Summers Passover delicacies and stories towards the end of this conversation, because I think people will actually want to hear that.
Okay, well, there's not much to say other than we went through everything that you go through, wore the yarmulke that kept falling off the top of the head. And
you don't use the bobby pin?
No.
Neither do I. Never used to use the bobby pin growing up.
Is that right?
No, I never used to do that. Let's save that for later. The Knicks and the Pistons. Playoff basketball, playoffs in New York. At this point, it will only be the Knicks because the Rangers are a total dumpster fire. We'll get to those Rangers in a second. But the Knicks, Pistons, what bar do you have set for the Knicks and for Thibodeau in the playoffs?
Well, that's a great question, Paulie, because, you know, they lost 3 out of 4 to the Pistons, and Cade Cunningham is the real deal. In the 4 games against the Knicks, as I alluded to in the monologue, he averaged 31 a game. And they're a very solid basketball team. They have not won a postseason game since 2008, and they have lost 14 consecutive playoff games. So they're going to be very, very hungry. And, of course, when the Knickerbockers lost to Detroit back in on April 10th, they didn't play Anunoby, they didn't play Hart, and Brunson, of course, has been injured, and they didn't play Mitchell Robinson, and that's no surprise to anyone because he's been more on the outside than in. But the Knickerbockers had trouble with the Pistons this season, and it's not going to be easy. I think they're going to beat them. The Knickerbockers have home court. Brunson now is getting himself into the game shape, and I think he'll be all set for leading the Knicks to a series win, but it won't be easy.
No, and it won't be. And you said it. They've struggled against the Pistons. Obviously, like you mentioned, they've struggled against the good teams in the East and the Thunder, 0-10 on the season, which is not acceptable. But if they don't get out of this series, if they don't get out of the first round, possibly if they don't get out of the second round, I think at that point, don't you have to consider, they're going to consider firing the coach, I would think. Because I don't know how much.
Thibodeau?
Yeah.
No.
Even if they lose in the first round? Someone's going to have to go, and it's much easier to fire coaches than it is to fire players.
Yeah, see, Laviolette should be gone. That's the coach. I wouldn't argue anyone saying otherwise. I mean, he just was awful this year. Hardly said anything as he stood behind the bench, and certainly whatever he was saying behind the bench or in the locker room, nobody was listening. But Thibodeau, the last week or so, even though the Knickerbockers haven't looked very good, look at who they've started. P.J. Tucker, McBride. We're talking about players that are not going to see the light of day against Detroit. And that's a good thing, whether it's load management, whether it's just resting them to make sure that they're in tip-top shape. and energized for taking on Detroit, the New York Knickerbockers should win the series, especially with home court advantage.
They absolutely should win, which is why I think if they do, I think they will win. But I think if they don't get at least to the Eastern Conference Finals, I think they're going to fire Tibbs.
Well,
I think because at one point you have to kind of recalibrate a few things, and all the players, they all love Tibbs. I understand that, right? But if you can't get over that hump, whether that be the Cavaliers, whether that be the Celtics, if you can't get over that hump, and you're not going to move Brunson, right? You're probably not going to move Karl Anthony Towns.
No.
Like, at that point, something else has to change because the current mix isn't working.
Well, okay. They had 51 wins.
Sure.
You don't sneeze at that. And again, it would be a major, major disappointment if they were to lose to Detroit. Boston is still number one, not just with the conference. And I think Boston, because of their experience, because of their bench, I think they could beat the Thunder. I think they can beat anyone from the Western Conference. And, of course, in their own Eastern Conference, I still think they could beat not only the Knicks, but Cleveland. But I agree with you. The Knickerbockers, if healthy, if energized, and if they play the kind of defense you have to play in the postseason, especially the Knickerbockers guarding the perimeter, making it difficult for three-point shots to take place. They should, if they remain healthy and they fulfill the expectations that we have for them, they could get to the finals and possibly could beat the Boston Celtics. Now, a lot of people are going to argue with that because Boston has not only a great starting five, but they also have a great bench, and they have a terrific coach. So the bottom line, and they know how to win, there's no question, defending champs, the whole thing. But the bottom line is I think the Knickerbockers, if healthy, if fulfill expectations and play the kind of energy they need, intensity they need, and especially guard the perimeter and contest shots, I think they have a chance, if they get to the finals, to beat Boston. I understand what you're saying about losing Thibodeau if they were eliminated by Detroit. That would be a major catastrophe.
Absolutely. Much like the Rangers' major catastrophe. And I agree with you. This has been bungled the entire season, whether it was the leak of the Kreider and Trouba on the trade list, which you mentioned earlier, not playing together, Igor not being able to stand on his head. And again, there's only so much the goalie can do if his blue line in front of him can't really defend and keeps turning the puck over in their own zone.
Yep.
Very difficult. I thought what they did with Gabe Perreault was bizarre. You waste a year of the kid's eligibility and you bench him the last 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
I thought that's ridiculous. I thought that made no sense, stupid. I do think Laviolette will be gone. I wonder who they get to replace him. And obviously we're talking about this and he has not been fired yet. I also do wonder how interested John Tortorella would be in the job.
Again.
Yeah, I wonder if Torts would be interested. He just got fired from Philly, and he's an older guy, but I think he would take that job because the Rangers, considering everything, are a playoff. They should be a playoff team.
Yeah,
and they will be a playoff team, I would think, next season. And it's not a rebuild situation like it was in Philadelphia for Torts.
Yeah. Tortorella, his teams were blocking shots right and left, leaving games, win or lose or tie, with bruises, bumps and bruises from all the blocked shots. But, that's an interesting guess on your part. I suppose that's possible, and I suppose that Drury would be interested in possibly bringing him back, at least interviewing him.
And that's if Drury doesn't get fired. Because one thing about Dolan, He's going to want to win. He's not going to keep wanting to do this resetting.
Yeah.
And again, this is going to be what I believe the third or fourth coach Drury is hired, which is a ton of leeway for a GM. A ton. In theory, I think former Blackhawks and Panthers coach Joel Quenneville will be a big option for them. I think that's probably the easy name is Coach Q.
Okay.
But I do think Tortorella would be interested in the job. Either way, you can get whoever you want behind the bench. The players have to play. And this season, Kreider was not good. Mika was not good. Adam Fox was weak. Keandre Miller wants to make you pull your hair out because he's so good at one time, and other times he just feels like he's playing with his head up his butt. So it is a incredibly frustrating team, an incredibly frustrating season, which had high expectations.
Oh, sure. And you're talking President's Trophy from a year ago. They won face-offs, not games. And Trocheck was great on face-offs, reminding me from long ago, Craig McTavish, who never lost a face-off for the New York Rangers, but winning a face-off, regardless of which zone you were in, didn't do much good for a New York Ranger team. Isn't it hard to believe they could not overcome a 2-goal deficit all year long?
That's the frustrating part. And again, you know, even Laviolette said, I believe, on this past weekend, that it's disappointing for everyone. No crap.
Yeah.
We know it's disappointing for everyone. Why didn't you do anything to adjust, to try to change that?
Yeah.
Like, you're the guy. Mm-hmm. You're the guy. Again, players have to play on the ice, but you're the guy. Fix it.
And he couldn't.
He couldn't.
He wasn't every problem.
No, of course not. That's ridiculous.
No. But he had no solutions. And hardly in the last week, a couple of games, said nothing behind the bench.
Drove you crazy. Drove you crazy if you're a Ranger fan.
Yeah, he gave up.
He did. You know who didn't give up, Steve? Transition. How about my guy, Rory McIlroy, putting on the green jacket, battling double bogey on the first hole of the final round. He double bogeys on 13. He sticks it to 2 feet on 17. He bogeys 18. Justin Rose shoots the round of his life at 6 under 66. They go to a playoff, and he sticks it to 3 feet again, and he wins. And he collapses on the green, sobbing. Legit sobbing. Was crying. And props to the TV coverage. I believe it, and obviously CBS. They didn't say a word. Nance and Immelman for 7 minutes. For 7 minutes, they just let Rory and the crowd take them home. Tremendous.
Well, first of all, how can you tell the difference between silence and golf announcers speaking? They all whisper. I can never hear, even with my hearing aids, I can't hear anything from a golf announcer. How come you weren't watching baseball instead of golf?
Major Sunday, I will be always watching golf over baseball. There's 162 games. Baseball, the Mets and the Yankees are going to be okay, although if Carlos Rodon keeps giving up home runs, maybe they won't be. But a fourth round with this much at stake, and I told people this, I told a few of my friends this that are golf fans like me, this about 5-hour stretch today, 6-hour stretch today, might be some of the best sports you will get in the year 2025. This was incredible to watch. Incredible theater, the drama, the highs, the lows, the peaks, the valleys, and this is why we all love sports. Because of what happened. And golf is a sport, and this is why. This is why.
It's a recreation. If your grandfather can play it, is that a sport?
Yes.
You're not even going against another golfer. You play the course. And so the azaleas, the dogwoods, the cherry blossoms, the sand, and the fescue. Fescue. Why can't they just say tall grass, weeds?
You never went to Augusta in your many, many years traveling the sports media circuit?
Yeah, but not during the Masters.
But you did go to Augusta.
Oh, yeah. It's a beautiful environment.
When did you go to Augusta? Wait. Hold on. When did you go to Augusta?
Well, let's see. I was there in Atlanta at WXIA TV 11 Alive, doing sports on the news. And let's see, the years I was there was 76 to almost 1980, 76 to the end of 79.
And you went to Augusta National Golf Course.
But during, we couldn't get a pass.
Of course.
Local TV, we were an ABC affiliate, could not get a pass to get into the Masters.
Incredible.
Although, was there not an Argentine who spent time in prison who was invited to be in this year's Masters?
Yeah,
he didn't make the cut.
No, he did not. Absolutely. Angel Cabrera. And he wasn't invited. He won the Masters, so he has the open invite whenever he wants to come back and play the Masters. He just got out of jail, earlier this year. For 30 months he was in jail.
Right.
He played the Seniors Tour 2 weeks ago, and he won. He won the Seniors Tour event.
And how many of the golfers in this Masters also are in that Saudi Arabian League?
A lot of them. The one Rory was paired with today, Bryson DeChambeau, was in LIV. John Rahm in LIV.
Why? Because of the money they're there, I guess. Is that it?
I think that's a safe guess.
I mean, what kind of they have with the golf there? And who would... That's blood money.
I think I do think that LIV and PGA will combine forces. I think it's stupid that they haven't yet. I think I think at one point it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is good, because that's what all golf fans want, is the best players back on one tour. And you see what happens today when that happens. When you have the best players from both tours at the same event, magic happens. Today, magic happened.
You're getting way too excited.
Oh, I love golf.
With the golf.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he wins a green jacket.
What did you think about the Mets playing in Sacramento?
Well, first of all, I mean, a minor league ballpark. And I worked years ago as a young man in Sacramento, where they had a AAA team that was owned by the Milwaukee Brewers. And Bob Lemon, a former Yankee manager, was the manager of the Sacramento Solon meaning like legislators, senators, because Sacramento is the capital. But the ballpark, first of all, their owner is as bad as you can imagine in any professional sport, and that would include any owner you don't like, Dolan notwithstanding. The bottom line is he screwed Oakland and then made a deal with Las Vegas. They don't have a stadium in Las Vegas. He didn't want to go back to Oakland, leaving their fans high and dry. So they end up in Sacramento playing in a minor league ballpark that seats about 14,000, and it's uncomfortable where the clubhouse is in relation to the dugout and playing field. Players don't like it. The anabolics that now call Sacramento home, they don't like it. It's a terrible, terrible situation. Very embarrassing for Major League Baseball. And yet you have this situation with the anabolics. Their fan base from Oakland takes a 2-hour drive to Sacramento. Sacramento has the Kings. There are more fans that can go to the arena to see the Kings than watch baseball with the anabolics at the stadium they play in. Sacramento, and I know because I was there, is a great place to live if you're a head of broccoli or you're an ear of corn. It's right in the middle of the San Joaquin Valley. It's farm territory. Ducks and geese and chicks better scurry when I take you out in Missouri with the fringe on top. I got used to the Icelanders and Old Country Road and rural from working in Sacramento, because watching the Icelanders at the Mausoleum along Old Country Road reminded me of farm territory, rural territory in Sacramento. And we all know that with the Rangers and the Icelanders, a great rivalry, Paulie. Of course, it is city and Broadway versus rural and Old Country Road.
I never knew that's where you got it from.
Yes.
I never knew the origin of the island and the Icelanders was Sacramento.
Well, yeah, Sacramento is, as I say, if you're corn, amber waves of grain. If you're corn, if you're broccoli, if you're tomatoes, and that's where I get Sacramento from. If you're a vegetable, it's a great place to live. Well, we'll wrap things up. And by the way, for those listening, we appreciate that, of course. And if you have a question, if you have a comment, whatever it may be, any kind of response to what you've been hearing with this number 3 podcast. And again, the podcast is Steve Summers' Schmoozing Sports, me here and you there with Paulie Rosenberg. We have an email address for you to respond. And the email address is me here, you there, 660 at gmail.com. Again, me here, you there, 660 at gmail.com. So, thanks for listening. Steve Summers, Schmoozing Sports, with me here and you there.